Shadows twisted and leapt across the narrow cave walls cast by the frantic sputtering of a lone torch. In the dim, stifling passageway, a tall man clad in a battered brown gambeson drove his steel longsword through a snarling goblin's skull. The blade pierced clean through bone with a wet, splintering crunch, and the goblin collapsed in a lifeless heap. Its ash-black sword and shield fell from limp fingers, the edges catching a faint red sheen while the rest of the metal devoured the torchlight. Without hesitation, a shorter figure swathed in a soot-stained black cloak rushed forward. His hood obscured most of his face, but the greedy gleam in his eyes was unmistakable. He dropped to one knee beside the corpse and rifled through the goblin's blood-soaked garments with deft and patient fingers, the torch bobbing dangerously in his free hand. "Damn it!" the cloaked man muttered, his voice tight with disappointment. "No keys, not even a half-rotten purse." Behind him, the taller man shifted his grip on the blood-slicked longsword and cleared his throat, the sound echoing uncomfortably in the narrow passage. When he spoke, his voice carried a wary edge of irritation. "You do realize it's madness to chase rumors this deep into the abandoned mines," he said. "All this for a couple of chess gloom-shade goblins might have dragged down here?" The cloaked man turned sharply. His hood dipped, its shadow swallowing most of his features, but his eyes caught the torchlight as he answered in a voice kept low and firm. "Relax, Reuben," he said with a dismissive wave. "As long as you drank the potion I gave you, the miasma won't touch you. You got at least 3 hours, which is plenty of time." He turned back to the corpse and stripped it of its remaining weapons, wrenching the armor free with a grunt. He lifted the bundle to test its weight, his arms dipping slightly as irritation crept across his face. "Too heavy to haul around right now," he muttered. He carried the gear a short distance off the path and leaned it against the cave wall, setting the sword and shield together before stacking the armor atop them. When he straightened, he cast one last glance at the pile. "We'll grab it on our way out," he added casually. "Be ashamed to leave good metal behind." Stretching the torch forward to peer deeper into the gloom, his voice shifted, quieter now, edged with something close to feverish excitement. "I'm telling you, this isn't ordinary plunder. There's going to be something different about this haul. You heard the barmaid yourself. Well-protected noble caravans don't just vanish. Nobles don't travel light either." He let out a breathy chuckle. "There's wealth down here, real wealth." Reuben tightened his grip on the sword and cast a wary glance into the thickening dark ahead. "It's not the miasma that concerns me, Maxwell," he said. "These goblins, they're better armed than the usual filth we cut down. I don't like poking around this deep without a full party." He stepped past his companion, his boots scraping across the stone floor. "Especially without a healer at our backs." Maxwell followed, his cloak whispering as he answered with a dry, unbothered chuckle. "Calm yourself," he said. "I brought enough potions and antidotes to stop a brewing plague." He patted the bulging pouch at his hip as he walked, "And if something ugly does crawl out of the dark..." He let the words trail off as a grin curved beneath the shadow of his hood. "We've got these." He reached into the pouch and produced a small vial, lifting it towards the torchlight. The liquid inside shimmered faintly, then vanished from sight as the glass caught the glow at a different angle. "Invisibility potions," he continued. "The good kind. Supposed to heal you while you're cloaked." He tucked the vial away again with a shrug. "Cost me a fortune, but it's worth every coin. Besides..." His grin widened as he glanced back. "Why split the loot 6 ways when we can split it 2? Reuben slowed his pace and glanced back at him. "A fortune?" he asked. "Where'd you even get something like that? And don't tell me you bought it from Glacia's concoctions. I'm not dying down here because you let them bleed you dry." Maxwell laughed softly but didn't answer. Reuben frowned, clearly unhappy with the silence, but after a moment he turned back toward the dark and pressed on, their footsteps echoing as the torchlight struggled to keep the shadows at bay. The miasma, once a faint violet haze clinging to the stone floor, had thickened into a heavy, slithering fog. It coiled around their boots and crept up their legs like living fingers, cold and damp against the skin. Somewhere beyond the tight cavern walls, guttural goblin grunts echoed through the tunnels, warped and stretched by the distance into a low animal chorus of hunger. Ahead, a battered wooden door clung to its last hinge, half swallowed by a collapsed ceiling. Rot had eaten deep into the planks, cracked spider webbing across the surface. Through the gaps, their faint torchlight flickered, illuminating nothing but rubble and ruin beyond. Maxwell crept forward and leaned cautiously around the doorframe. In the corner of the chamber, nestled among the fallen stone and dust, sat a single chest that the ruin around it had somehow failed to touch. Gold markings gleamed across its surface, vivid and embellished, twisting around the wood like climbing vines. Maxwell turned back to Reuben, his voice reduced to a hungry whisper. I think I might have found something. Come on. They slipped past the broken door, stepping carefully through the loose stone and splintered wood, each footfall placed with deliberate care to avoid the crunch of rubble beneath their boots. The farther they moved into the chamber, the colder the air became, pressing against their chests with every breath. Maxwell crouched in front of the chest and handed the torch back to Reuben without taking his eyes off of it. He leaned in close, angling his body so his shadow wouldn't obscure the gold-etched surface, and began working methodically along the seams. His gloved fingers tested the edges, pressed gently at the hidden gaps, traced the underside where a careless trapmaker might have cut corners. I've never seen craftsmanship like this, he said under his breath as he worked, his attention never fully leaving the chest. Whatever's inside, it isn't common treasure. When he finished, he withdrew his hands and shifted back onto his heels, confidence setting into his posture as he looked up at Reuben. There are no triggers, no pressure plates, and no enchantments tied to any locks. If there was a trap here, I'd be dead already. He reached out and pulled at the lid. It resisted him completely. Scowling, Maxwell adjusted his position and began inspecting the sides instead, his fingers following the intricate gold inlays carved into the wood. The designs resolved into dragons wreathed in flame, their bodies twisting around the chest in interlocking loops. Each scale had been etched individually, each flame carefully shaped, the precision so exact it borderlined on obsessive. A few paces away, Reuben stood watch, sword drawn, eyes sweeping the darkness beyond the torchlight. After a moment, he muttered quietly, That emblem, it's from Enos, the Old Kingdom. Maxwell glanced back, but Reuben wasn't looking at him. My father served there before it fell, Reuben continued, his voice lower now. I used to see that symbol on the banners, on the palace guard shields. There was a brief, somber pause. Maxwell's eyes gleamed. So you're saying, he said slowly, this isn't just some noble's wealth. His grin widened. This could be royal treasure. Exactly, Reuben replied. For the first time, a spark of excitement cut through his usual caution. Maxwell returned to the chest, running his hands reverently along its carvings. Half smiling despite himself, Reuben added, There was a bakery just outside the castle walls, run by a fox demi-hume. She used to sneak my brother and me pastries when our father was drilling with the knights. His voice drifted. Haven't tasted anything like them since. Maxwell snorted. Memory lane can wait. Bring the torch over here. I can't bloody see, you cunt. Sorry, Reuben muttered, adjusting the torch and driving the shadows back. That emblem just brought it all back. Before Maxwell could turn back to the chest, a sudden, blinding pain tore through his left arm. A wet, nauseating crunch split the air. Maxwell's eyes went wide as he looked down. His elbow was simply gone, severed as if shorn away by monstrous, rusted shears. Blood erupted from the ragged stump in violent, rhythmic spurts, splashing across the rubble-strewn floor. His scream ripped through the stale cavern, a shrill, desperate sound that ricocheted wildly off the cold stone walls. The chest he had been kneeling before now gaped open with obscene hunger. From within, dagger-long teeth glistened, slick with thick, blackened saliva that hissed softly when it struck the ground. Its tongue, a writhing mass of worm-like tendrils, twitched and writhed in eager anticipation. Maxwell staggered backward, clutching the ruin of his arm. He then fumbled beneath his cloak, fingers slick with blood as he tried to draw a weapon. Trembling with fear, his grip slipped from the dagger's hilt, sending his pouch of potions spilling loose as glass clattered uselessly along the stone floor. Seizing the opportunity, the thing lunged. Its wooden body snapped open wider than any natural thing should, then clapped its jaws down around his head with a sickening, bone-crushing crack. Reuben watched in mute horror as his friend's headless body stumbled backward, blood erupting in wild jets from the shredded ruin of his neck. The corpse spasmed violently, armed and stump flailing like a broken marionette, before collapsing onto the blood-slick stone. The chest shuddered as it gorged. Chunks of flesh and splintered bone were spat from its maw, raining down with wet, meaty slaps. One of Maxwell's fingers skittered across the floor like a dying insect. Wood scraped against stone as the creature shifted its weight, joints snapping and groaning in the gloom. Slowly, deliberately, it turned its blood-soaked maw toward Reuben. Terror lanced through him, but his training twisted it into drive. With a hoarse shout, Reuben leveled his longsword and charged, thrusting for the creature's core. After a deafening crack, the sword snapped in half between its jagged, gore-slicked teeth like a dry twig. Reeling, Reuben dropped the hilt and reached for his short sword. Something slithered around his ankles, a glistening appendage, somewhere between a tentacle and a spider's leg, coiled tight and yanked. Reuben was ripped off his feet and slammed hard against the stone. The breath fled his lungs in a painful rush. His vision swam. He clawed at the floor, trying to push himself up, and saw his legs, or where his legs should have been. Nothing remained below the thigh but bloody, ragged stumps, arterial blood pumping out in horrific fountains. Reuben gasped as the world tilted violently around him. Pain unlike anything he had ever known tore through his nerves, lighting his spine on fire. The creature closed in, lids snapping open and shut, maw dripping with black ichor. Its tendrilled tongue lashed out and latched onto him, dragging him closer. He kicked with what remained of his legs. He clawed at the stone. He screamed. It was futile. The jaws opened wide, revealing rows upon rows of serrated, dripping teeth. As the tendrils hoisted him upward, Reuben caught one last glimpse of Maxwell's ruined torso, mutilated from within, already half-digested, bone protruding through shredded muscle. Then the darkness swallowed him, crunching, grinding, pulverizing. Slick warmth washed over his body as the gnashing grew louder, reverberating through his hollowing chest. Reuben howled, the sound pitiful and broken, smothered deep within the beast's gaping maw. Each scream escaped only when the jaws parted between bites, his brief, wet gasps of agony bleeding into the stagnant cave air. The thing did not merely devour, it savored. It chewed with deliberate, torturous slowness, grinding through bone and tendon as though relishing every fiber it stripped away. The crunch of splintering ribs and the wet tear of muscle being ripped from bone echoed in grotesque harmony against the cavern walls. The sound grew deafening, drowning even Reuben's hoarse screams as his body was gradually unmade. Madness gnawed at the edge of his mind. Each heartbeat slowed, weakened. His limbs twitched with dying spasms as blood loss leached the warmth from his skin. The world narrowed into a collapsing tunnel rimmed with the crimson light. Nearby, the torch, still sputtering weakly, lay in a spreading pool of blood. Its light rippled across the puddle, painting the walls with shifting, grotesque shadows. One final gout of blood splashed across the flame. The torch sputtered once, twice, then choked out completely. The cavern was swallowed by a suffocating, perfect darkness. The chest sat silently once more in its corner, still, patient, as though it had never moved at all.